You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, celebrating the first few days of spring while a raging snow blizzard swirls outside my windows. Poor confused planet. A brief note about next week. We will be on spring break, so you can catch up on any episodes you may have missed, but we will be back reliably on April 8th. In the meantime, have a happy April Fool's Day, which this year happens to be the same day as Easter Sunday, and the less I say about that overlap, the better. But our program today should be music to your ears. One of my guests is poised to become the first African-American female governor in United States history, and from Georgia yet. And the other has been called the godmother of women's rock and roll. And there's Surrealism Corner and Fighting Words, of course, all that coming up. But first, let's go inside the headlines. I'm going to try to get this week's standard Trump world catastrophes out of the way by some quickie items. We learned that Cambridge Analytica, the data-gathering company credited with Trump's electoral victory, harvested 50 million private Facebook profiles of U.S. voters and used them to influence choices at the ballot box. We also heard secretly taped conversations with Cambridge Analytica's CEO boasting about their use of blackmail, bribes, payoffs, entrapment, and using prostituted women as bait, preferably trafficked, quote, beautiful young girls from Ukraine, close quote. A few days after that story broke, sending Facebook into a long overdue meltdown, Trump was congratulating Putin on his surprise re-election, not mentioning poisonings attacks or our own electoral system, then firing FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe 26 hours before his retirement, sadistically robbing him of his pension. But McCabe is fighting back. G-Man versus, well, mobster, just like in the movies and in the 1920s. Oh, and Trump's housing secretary, Ben Carson, gallantly blamed his wife for the $30,000 dining room table. Okay, onward. Neither the serial bomber in Austin, Texas, or the latest high school shooter in Maryland were Muslim or immigrants, though both were male and both were white. Claiming that he was saving the unborn on March 19th, Governor Phil Bryant of Mississippi signed into law a measure that would ban almost all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy, the earliest such ban in the nation. The state's only abortion clinic left, the Jackson Women's Health Organization, quickly filed a complaint in federal court to block the law as unconstitutional. Mississippi law had previously prohibited abortions after 20 weeks, although long-standing Supreme Court precedent established in Roe v. Wade and reaffirmed in 2016 notes that states may not ban the procedure before the fetus is deemed viable outside the womb, generally at about 24 to 26 weeks. As Nina Simone sang, Mississippi goddamn. Looking abroad, the head of a prominent Islamic university in Indonesia, in the central Java city of Yogyakarta, banned the wearing on campus of the niqab, the headdress that completely covers a woman's face except for eye slits. The move was regarded as a significant pushback against the conservative drift of Islam, but a string of protests staged by former members of an Islamist group outlawed by the government for spreading extremism, and 1 week after the niqab ban was instituted, it was rescinded. While Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim majority country, it is not an Islamic state, but clearly there are those who want to push it there. Human rights groups have found that security officials in Nigeria failed to act after being alerted that Boko Haram militants were on their way to Dapchi, the town where they kidnapped 110 more schoolgirls on February 19th. The government and the army deny the charge, and the local police have fallen silent. This is the second major such abduction, although there have been minor kidnappings of individuals since April 2014, when Boko Haram notoriously stormed a girls' school in Chibok and kidnapped nearly 300 students. And news just in on this latest abduction. Boko Haram suddenly released 101 of the 110 girls in a deal with the government, which makes me, for one, suspicious at this revolving door process. 5 girls are known to have died while in captivity this time. Apparently, a girl's life in Nigeria is of far more value to Boko Haram as a sexual and labor slave or a forced soldier than it is to the Nigerian government. Time to return home again to what is actually a bit of good news. Jurors awarded former University of Minnesota at Duluth women's hockey coach $3.74 million in her lawsuit against her longtime employer. The jury found that UMD had discriminated against Shannon Miller on the basis of her sex and had retaliated against her for making Title IX complaints when officials decided not to offer her a new contract. She said, "It's a big day for women in general, but especially women in college athletics." And to wind this up with a bit of a smile, well, women swept the National Book Critics Circle Awards, prevailing in all of the 6 competitive categories. That's a first. Joan Silber took the fiction prize for her novel Improvement. The autobiography prize went to Xiaolu Guo for her book 9 Continents, a Memoir in and Out of China. Frances Fitzgerald won the nonfiction prize for The Evangelicals, The Struggle to Shape America. Lei Li Long Soldier won in poetry for her collection Whereas. The prize in criticism went to Karina Chocano for her essays compilation You Play the Girl on Playboy bunnies, Stepford wives, train wrecks, and other mixed messages. And Caroline Fraser garnered the award in biography for her book Prairie Fires, The American Dreams of Laura Ingalls Wilder. Congratulations to all 6 writers. Hip, hip, hooray. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and coming right up, well, my first guest is a woman who's already made history and bodes to make even more, because she may well become the nation's first African-American woman governor.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Stacey Abrams, my first guest today, is an American politician, lawyer, and businesswoman who was the House Minority Leader for the Georgia General Assembly and was state representative for the 89th House District. She's a member of the Democratic Party and a candidate in the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial election. If any of her opponents want to come on, they're quite welcome. She, when in high school, was hired as a typist for a congressional campaign and later was hired as a speechwriter at age 17 based on the edits she made while typing. She became the first woman to lead either party in the Georgia General Assembly, and she has received more awards for being the Distinguished Legislator of the Year or the Rising Legislator of the Year from distinguished sources, more than I have time to name. In 2012, she received the John F. Kennedy New Frontier Award from the Kennedy Library and Harvard University's Institute of Politics. She is the inaugural recipient of the Gabrielle Giffords Rising Star Award in 2014, and Ebony Magazine in 2001 named her one of 30 leaders of the future. And the future is here because she bodes well to become the first black woman governor in the United States. Here is Stacey Abrams. Welcome to the program, Leader Abrams. Stacey, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, congratulations. You have been the first in so many areas that you must have the scars to show for it. You were the first woman to lead either party in the Georgia General Assembly, and you were the first African American to lead in the Georgia House of Representatives. Congratulations. And now you bode well to be the first black woman governor in these United States of America. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed, everything crossed. How's it looking?
Things are looking great. We have recently seen polling that shows me ahead of my primary opposition by double digits. But what's also very telling is that of the two candidates, I'm the only one of us who's actually beating almost every Republican in the field.
Yes.
And where I'm not beating the front runner who has been lieutenant governor for 11 years, I'm actually very competitive. And what I think it signals writ large is there is absolutely a path to victory in Georgia.
Wow, turning Georgia blue. I cut my political eye teeth in the civil rights movement, and one of the places that I did voter registration, of course, was Georgia, and then later was there during the Andy Young days. And so the idea of turning Georgia blue just makes my heart sing. And clearly, although the district that you represented was partially Atlanta and environs, which is, world famous liberal, clearly your popularity translates into the rest of Georgia.
And I appreciate that. I served as minority leader for 7 years as the Democratic leader in the House. My job was to travel the state and to really understand how to support the members of the legislature who were in the House Democratic Caucus. Mm-hmm. I did that intentionally because I wanted to understand the communities they served, the people they were speaking to. And I was able, over the course of that time, to build really deep relationships across the state of Georgia. I've been to almost every county. We're going to finish it up before the end of the primary. I've got 4 to go. And in the state of Georgia, there are 159 counties, so that's a lot of places to visit.
Wow.
But the reason I launched my campaign in Albany and that I've spent the last 7 years traveling the state so intentionally is that you cannot lead a place you don't understand. Mm-hmm. And as much as I'm excited about spending time and growing up and spending my adult life in Atlanta, I want to represent the entire state of Georgia. I want to lead the entire state of Georgia.
And you're also well known for working with the opposition. I mean, I've read a quote from you. This was back in when you co-sponsored in 2011 legislation that preserved the Hope Scholarship Program, and you cooperated with Republican Governor Deal. The program was going to be preserved by decreasing the scholarship amount paid to the students, but by funding a 1% low-interest loan program for students. And I've read this quote from you around that time saying, my fundamental philosophy is that my first job is to cooperate and collaborate with the other side whenever I can. How does that work these days in the time of polarization?
I will say that it was a time of polarization when I started as minority leader. But here's what I meant by that. My job is to serve people first, not to serve politics, not to serve ambition, but to serve people. And if that means working with those in power, then that's what I do. And as leader, when Republicans threatened to eliminate the scholarship for most students, any student who couldn't achieve a 1,200 on a standardized test or pass the standardized test scores, plus have a B average, they would have lost access to the scholarship. My responsibility was to preserve the scholarship for as many students as possible. But in addition, it was to also make certain that 4-year-olds could still go to universal full-day pre-K, which was also on the chopping block. And it was to make certain that remedial classes were still available for folks going back to technical college. And as you well recall, Robin, in 2011, that was in the midst of the economic crisis when people were losing their jobs and going back to school to get trained. These were all critical decisions that by working with Republicans and putting aside partisanship, we were able to serve thousands of Georgians, and I'm very proud of that work.
Well, you should be proud of it. I mean, but the sound you hear is me falling off my chair in shock that anybody would actually, put the people's needs first, which is not that common these days. You have to warn me when you say something like that because I could have a stroke on the spot. Now maybe I'm atavistic in thinking backward to Georgia in the old days when I first went there as a young woman in voter registration. But are we still facing, certainly we are in other parts of the country, voter suppression problems?
Oh, absolutely. Let's understand this. Georgia is an extraordinary state. It is a state of great diversity and great promise. And my mission is to build the Georgia of tomorrow, not just bring back the Georgia of the past. But there are some vestiges of that past that remain with us that we still have to fight. One of those is voter suppression. And as the creator of the New Georgia Project, I led an effort to register 200,000 people of color between 2014 and 2016. In addition, the New Georgia Project has fought the Secretary of State, who coincidentally is now running for governor, fought the Secretary of State to defend voters who had their registrations illegally canceled, who had their polling places shifted from churches and community centers into jails, and found themselves followed by sheriffs trying to prove that they had the right to vote. We have a lot of work to do in Georgia, but what I'm excited about is that we have the opportunity to do that work, and that I have a proven track record of leadership in getting this work done. 2018 is going to be a pivotal year for the right of voters across this country, and we have the opportunity in Georgia to elect someone who is a proven and deeply committed civil rights activist. I'm the daughter of two folks who grew up in Mississippi and were part of the civil rights movement. And my parents taught us to revere the right to vote, but they also taught us to defend that right and to fight for anyone whose right to vote was in jeopardy. And so, no, we haven't completely eliminated voter suppression, but electing me as the next governor of Georgia will be really, really close to getting us on that track.
Now, it's so exciting. I mean, you bring an incredible energy and excitement to the race that I haven't quite seen anywhere else. I mean, there's this amazing grassroots movement rising, whether it's Indivisible or whether it was the Women's March, Black Lives Matter. There's, activism is back with real people. And every time it might seem to lag, the gift that keeps on giving, Donald Trump, reactivates it yet again. But you seem to bring a remarkable combination of expertise and practicality along with vision. I know that environment is one of your major causes and preoccupation. Talk a little bit about that.
Certainly. When I was in college, I actually worked for the Environmental Protection Agency twice. The first time for the Environmental Criterion and Assessment Office in North Carolina, and the second time for the Environmental Justice Division in D.C. The environment is an issue that impacts every community, particularly low-income communities, communities of color, and disadvantaged communities writ large. We have to own the conversation of climate change and environmental protection because it is truly and simply about our lives. When you see skyrocketing rates of asthma, when you hear about children who are drinking lead-contaminated water, when you understand that literally our ability to exist relies on our capacity to control the environmental challenges we face, then everyone should be an environmentalist. I grew up on the Gulf of Mexico near Louisiana, which had an area known as Cancer Alley because of the chemical waste. I spent time in Atlanta working on environmental issues because I saw the number of young people who lived near incinerators simply because their families were poor. These are conversations we have to have, but these are also opportunities. I'm proud to be the only candidate who's released an advanced energy jobs plan that talks not only about how do you fight for the environment, but how do you make it work for people? How do you create good jobs, advanced energy jobs on using hydro, biomass, wind, and solar, jobs that run the gamut from high-tech jobs to medium-skill jobs, but jobs that anyone can do and make a solid living. Because part of our opportunity is not only to protect the environment, but to build the economic capacity and economic mobility of our communities. Having the flexibility and the freedom to choose, the autonomy to move and to decide where you live is an incredibly important part of environmental activism, and that's the piece I really want to focus on.
I have to ask one more question. You have published not only a sober, grown-up, distinguished book called Minority Leader, a book of leadership advice, which came out this year, but you have published and some of them have sold more than 100,000 copies, romantic suspense novels under the name Selena Montgomery. Talk a minute about that. What other major political figure, because I think you are one, or certainly are about to be in this country, can boast of that?
I am unaware of any other romantic suspense novelist who has also stood for high political office. And I wrote my first novel during my third year of law school. It was based on my ex-boyfriend's dissertation. We had a bad breakup, but I got something really good out of it.
That's all that counts.
Exactly. But I like talking about being Selena Montgomery, which is the pen name I used to write those books, because at the time I was writing as Selena Montgomery, I was also publishing my first articles on tax policy. Oh. And today, my new book, Minority Leader, which comes out in late April, that book really draws on what I learned as a romance novelist, which is how to use a story and how to tell a story in a way that helps people understand where they fit into a narrative. And whether it's how do you change your life or how do you escape, evil minions who are trying to destroy you, I had the opportunity to really think broadly about the kind of writer and the kind of leader I want to be. And so, Selena Montgomery will always remain close to my heart. It was just an honor to be able to write in her voice and to tell stories about orphans and grifters and ethnobotanists and chemical physicists. And now as a candidate for governor and as someone who has been privileged to be a leader, to be able to also talk about how I got there and how, even though there aren't a lot of folks who have my resume, there's no one out there who doesn't have the capacity to be a leader. Being a minority is not a disqualifier. It is a superpower. It is a secret power often, but it is a superpower that can compel us and propel us forward. And I want people to understand that not only when they read my novels, but when they read Minority Leader.
Well, I will read all of them. And and I hope that Selena isn't put to bed forever. I hope that there might come a day when you might revisit her while in the governor's house. I mean,
Did she? Well, actually, there's a third book in the trilogy that I have yet to write, and I hear about it from some Georgia friends who want to know how the last three. I wrote two books, Reckless and Deception, and the third book, Julia's story, I haven't quite finished, so I'm not going to be allowed to, I think, run for re-election until I get that book done. So we'll make sure it happens.
I like it. I like the deadline, too.
Absolutely. If I can do one quick thing.
Yes.
Just want to tell all of your listeners, please go to StaceyAbrams.com for more information about my campaign. Primary is May 22nd. General is November 6th. And you can find me on every social media platform at Stacey Abrams. Thank you so much, Robin, for having me on your show and for the time to really share my vision with your listeners.
Well, I hope that once you're governor, that I will be able to be allowed in the door to interview you again, because I know that's in the future. Thanks again, Stacey.
Take care.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. The Fox News website has a sudden focus on women as sex offenders. Much of the website's content reflects a tabloid aesthetic anyway, but the dramatic spike in coverage of female sex criminals debuted in the aftermath of the sexual harassment scandals at Fox News, and it has increased since the Me Too movement began. Sex crimes committed by women actually comprise a very small share of sexual offenses in the United States, according to all evidence in all studies. But FoxNews.com readers could be excused for having an opposite impression. Noah Koch, the 43-year-old editor of the site, who was handpicked by Rupert Murdoch to be vice president of digital operations at Fox News, said that the coverage was, quote, not meant to be proportionate to national crime statistics. He added, we don't cover sex crimes like statisticians. We cover what's interesting to the reader. And there you have it. There you have Fox News in a nutshell. About 1 in 5 Japanese women in prison is elderly. Japan's population is the oldest in the world, and many older women searching for community and stability are actually committing minor crimes in order to get locked up. This certainly runs contrary to the myth that Japan is a culture saturated with reverence for the elderly, unless, of course, you're referring to elderly men. In fact, the nickname for an old Japanese woman is tatami mat. That's a mat on which to wipe your feet. A New York judge has rejected a bid by Donald Trump to dismiss a lawsuit about his alleged groping of a contestant on The Apprentice in 2007. This is the Summer Zervos case, you may recall. Trump's lawyers argued that he's immune from lawsuits in state court while serving as president, but Judge Jennifer Schechter ruled that there was absolutely no authority justifying tossing out litigation over unofficial conduct. The judge also refused to halt the case for the term of the Trump presidency, raising the possibility that he could be ordered to submit to a deposition about his conduct toward Zervos and perhaps other women as well. Zervos, who claims Trump groped her and forcibly kissed her when she was seeking work opportunities, sued him for defamation after he insisted that her allegations were false and that she was a liar. Zervos, alongside the former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who's suing him, and of course Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels. Wow, wouldn't it be great if, Russia aside, it was women who brought him down? Here's a brief item that's rather alarming. A staggering 44 cents out of every dollar spent online is spent at Amazon. This is just too much power for any one company, people. Whatever happened to regulations of monopolies? And this last one. In the competition for who can be the most Islamist patriarchs, Al-Qaeda is pushing back against the way the Islamic State or Daesh or ISIS regards women. Al-Qaeda has just launched a magazine called Baituki, which means your home in Arabic. Apparently irritated by the way other Islamist jihadist militants use their women, Al-Qaeda's message is, stay home. Make your house a paradise on earth. Prepare the food your husband loves, prepare his bed after that, and in it do whatever he wants. Don't dabble in his work, and never nag him. Can you imagine all the bloodshed and bones he sees every day? Your fussing only increases the pressure. That's a memorable line. Can you imagine all the bloodshed and bones he sees every day? Your fussing only increases the pressure. The Islamic State has called women to the front lines and, in its desperation for more fighters, forced them there, training women to use weapons and giving women a role in spreading propaganda online. Before they lost Mosul, ISIS deployed a number of female suicide bombers to throw themselves, or be pushed, at Iraqi forces. Well, now Al-Qaeda fears the conflict has made women too vocal, active, and empowered. So, the Great Choices Department offers, through Baituki, it offers the alternative, femininity, to get your holy warrior's attention. Quote, stealing is legal when you're stealing your man's heart, it counsels, and flirt like a butterfly, and wear dashing clothes. Dashing clothes? What fun battlefield boutique are you going to pick those up from? And you're going to wear them under your totally veiled body, in which you could be mistaken for a moving bolt of cloth? Now, the Taliban's magazine, everybody has their own magazine, it features gun-toting women, but not Al-Qaeda. Baituki shows designer homes furnished with mahogany chairs and neat stacks of dishes. It even runs an advice column for frustrated brides. And boy, there's a lot of them. In addition, Al-Qaeda is rolling out women's institutes to spread domesticity. Its Syrian offshoot distributes thousands of black abayas, or full-body coverings, for wearing over those dashing clothes. Good old-fashioned Al-Qaeda. None of this arming women. For them, femininity and domesticity are all in keeping with Baituki's message from Al-Qaeda, quote, "Weren't you thrilled when your husband told you he was going to join the jihad for God, even though you knew that perhaps he might never return?" Close quote. Thrilled when you thought he might never return. Maybe that's the secret double message in there. You think? We've got to take another short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with a woman who's been called the godmother of women's music. That's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again. June Millington is a Filipina-American guitarist, songwriter, producer, educator, who's perhaps best known for being a co-founder and lead guitarist of the all-female rock band Fanny, which was active from 1970 to 74. She was described by Guitar Player magazine as the hottest female guitarist in the music industry. And she is the co-founder and artistic director of the Institute for the Musical Arts, IMA, in Goshen, Massachusetts. Since the 1970s, she's been highly regarded for her work on behalf of women musicians and the LGBT community. She not only founded the Institute for the Musical Arts, but one of its projects, which is now a whole flower in itself, is the Rock and Roll Camp for Girls. Does this not make you wish you were a girl again? And she was featured in and also was the associate director of Radical Harmonies. That was the story of women's music, a documentary in 2002 that was directed by Dee Mosbacher. And in February 2013, she and her sister alumni, Alice DeBure and Jean Millington from Fanny, re-recorded 2 Fanny classic songs for a documentary entitled Feminist, Stories from the Women's Liberation, 1963 to 1970. She continues to produce music. Play Like a Girl, her album, together with her sister Jean, was released in August 2011 on the label Fabulous Records, and she's here with us today to talk about IMA and the Girls Rock and Roll Camp. Here is, drum roll, June Millington. June Millington, welcome to the program, June.
Great to be here.
You are one of the golden oldies who's still going incredibly strong. What I call one of the long distance runners. You've done so much for women in music. You've been called the godmother of women's music. And I want to talk about all these projects. I want to focus on 2 that you co-founded, and you're still the artistic director of the Institute for the Musical Arts in Goshen, IMA, yeah. Because that is so crucial. I mean, it really is basically about guiding and creating vision and needs and addressing the concerns of women for rock and roll, workshops on vocal and instrumental instruction, album production, recording techniques, composition, booking, promotion, entertainment law. You cover the waterfront, and one of those things, and then I want to talk about in depth, which is the Women Rock and Roll Camp for Girls. It's so great.
Yes, yeah, it's pretty incredible. I call IMA my teacher because I've learned so much, about in some cases, kind of tempering my vision. I had to throw out what I thought I was going to teach the first day because I realized, and we didn't start our Rock and Roll Girls Camp till 2002 because we didn't own any property before that. See, IMA started in '86 with a vision that started at Olivia at a meeting that I happened to be at where they wanted to get more women of color involved. That was in '76.
Right.
And I heard a voice saying, somebody's got to take care of these young women coming through now, and 10 years later, I heard the voice, in my head even louder.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine it had there been a rock and roll camp for girls when we were little? I might not have been a writer.
Well, exactly. And there are a lot of women who've walked through the door into our barn, which I call the magical queendom, and get tears in their. It is. We really did manifest it, and they can feel the intention, and they get tears in their eyes.
Of course.
You have all this equipment. It's really incredible.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then learning the skills to really use it,
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. So start about IMA. It's nonprofit. How does it survive?
We used to go for, grant writing, but really it's people, mostly women, who come through our doors, our property, and see what we're actually doing. So a lot of women have donated different amounts. I mean, I remember when we first started, we got a $1 bill in the mail from Hawaii with no return address. And then, 10 years later, we got $50,000 from a private donor. So, it's just one day at a time. And like Ann Hackler, who's my partner and who co-founded IMA with me. And by the way, Angela Davis was on the founding board. So just from that, you can realize how actually radical we are, but we're quietly radical because we just do the job. We just do it.
And you were in California, and now you're in Massachusetts.
That's right. We were renting part of a place called the Old Creamery in Bodega, which was just a lovely spot. And, I always say that the spirits, the ancestors, our guides, they closed every door. Well, to me in particular, I took it personally because I did not want to leave, and led us right here to Goshen, Massachusetts. I never could have imagined, but that's what they set up. And once we got here, other things started to happen because we'd already, we basically visualized it. We planted the seed, we watered it, we made sure it had sunlight and a lot of love, but we didn't own property. Mm-hmm. And the minute we got property, we could start other programs like the Rock and Roll Girls Camps, in which I, in particular, and many other people, really pour that which we've learned in terms of, just even how to survive on the road.
They come as early as 9.
Yes, that's preteen camp. Yeah.
Oh God! And and how does it go? I mean, and it goes all the way up to.
Well, preteen is 9 to 12, and then anything that has teen is the teen camp.
I see.
What's interesting is that at first we tried adult camp, and I really didn't like it because people are set in their ways, and we thought, well, let's try preteen. And the instant we started the first one, I realized, they're still in the years of magical thinking. I love this.
Well, yeah, there's the wonderful Carol Gilligan studies that show that right around age 12, up until age 12, when the society clamps down, girls sort of stand with their feet apart and their hands on their hips, and they say, "You're not the boss of me," and I think and I want, and then it begins to happen, and suddenly they're saying, "Well, I must be crazy, but I think," or "I'm sure this isn't a good idea, but I want," and and bit by bit, it comes in and tries to poison, and so you're getting them and defending them at just the perfect time, and so then they have classes and things, and they also have.
Oh, it's first of all, they're not allowed to leave the magical queendom, and their parents are not allowed to drop by. So we really enter our own orb, our own sphere. And part of that is because if you don't do that, then they're not going to get to that place that's not so restless, that's silent, that's more meditative, even though there's an awful lot of action. I mean, if you were to drive by, you would see kinetic energy 24/7 because they stay here, they eat here, the food is cooked here. Right. But it really is like an orb. And in that orb, they come to understand that they're totally safe, and then a lot of other stuff can happen. Because they're running already. I mean, it's a dangerous world, and it's dangerous to be a girl. And by the way, this past summer, 2017, is the first time I heard girls talking about politics and actually being radicalized at every meal.
That's wonderful.
I mean, I'm talking 9 years old and up.
That's
so wonderful. Something is happening. It's really, it's changed. It's changing from the ground level up.
Yes,
and
it is.
We're a part of that because, I feel really strongly about not having to declare so much that we're changing the world one girl at a time, which is what we're doing.
Of course.
But when you do it that way, that's the radical change, because you can't change the music industry from the outside. You got to do it from the inside. That's really what we're doing, and it's subversive and it's radical and it's revolutionary.
Wow. How long does it last, the camp?
Well, preteen is only 5 days, because actually the moms and the daughters are still pretty much attached till 8. So 9 to 12, and then that's 5 days, and then the 2 teen camps are 10 days, and the recording camp is 10 days.
Amazing. Yeah. Just amazing. And
it is amazing, because we've actualized that which I started to hear when I started playing with Chris Williamson in 1975. And by the way, I was dragged kicking and screaming into the women's movement. I did not want to be politicized. I didn't want to join. I didn't want to have to talk about all the sexism and racism first that I'd gone through, because essentially in rock and roll, in Fanny, I had just learned how to play better and louder,
Right.
And that was my voice.
Of course.
Now I had to actually process and think about it and take it in, but it happened, and it happened for a really good reason, because within the context of IMA, rock and roll and feminism, the women's music movement, have come together.
Yes. Well, It's a very different climate now. I mean, women, the voices from the music community speaking out, the women, in terms of the Me Too movement, in terms of Time's Up, in terms of a lot of things. It's just a different cup of tea. Your own Play Like a Girl, which is your most recent album, is a far cry from the Fanny days. Both musically and politically and every other way. So it's a very, very exciting time. And if people want to join, send their daughter or their niece or or themselves,
just go to ima.org.
And
by the way, IMA, we didn't find out till years later, is actually Ima, which is mother.
You're kidding?
No.
In what language?
I think Hebrew, something Yiddish maybe. One of those.
Well, there you go. So the IMA is the Institute for the Musical Arts.
IMA.org, baby.
And that's where you go if you're past teen.
So we're just outside of Northampton. Think Smith College, but 20 minutes towards the Berkshires, and we own 25 acres. We have a house, 2 barns, and the larger barn is a performance center. It's now got a bunkhouse attached to it for the girls, and 2 recording studios also built onto it, and 2 yurts outside with electricity. So it's pretty incredible.
My God. Well, congratulations. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm a little late to the party here, to say, since
you can come visit.
You've been coming for some time, but it just sounds like a dream place and absolutely wonderful. And I think of all those little girls who, were told, oh, well, you can't play rock and roll. I mean,
the pipeline on the one end of it are girls who've been coming since 2002, and some of them have graduated from college already, like Yale and, Tufts and so on. And then you have people who write to me and say, my granddaughter was just born 9 years. I mean, they're already projecting, and this happens quite a bit, that they're planning that their grandchild is going to come in 9 years.
Oh, that's lovely.
They send me baby pictures.
That's just lovely. She's going to be on the drums. We can tell already.
Yeah. Class of 2023 or whatever.
Yeah, she's only 6 weeks old, but this one's definitely going to be on bass.
Well, they got their heads screwed on right.
You got it. Oh, well, congratulations again. Thanks for doing this great work. Well,
it's my healing. It's my healing.
Well,
really,
it's a wonderful organizing contribution as well on so many fronts, and on the artistic front. I mean, as arts and politics coming together. I mean, what could be better? What could be better?
What could go wrong?
No, it'll all go right. Bless you for that. Thanks so much, June. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. It's been so lovely having you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. We finally caught up with each other.
We did. We did indeed. Time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back directly with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with some fighting words. The Me Too movement is about women daring to speak our painful secrets we've been forced to keep buried, from fear, from shame, about what's been done to us. But women suffer not only from having to hide secrets of our own lives. Perhaps we suffer from being compelled to keep the secrets of men's lives even more. Any entitled power group can afford to entrust, for which read burden, the less powerful group with its secrets and its treasures far more than the reverse. Think of white people during institutionalized slavery and today during institutionalized racism, handing over family secrets and even care of their precious children to servants who are just like one of the family except they're not, and whom they themselves regard consciously or unconsciously as not quite human. It's assumed that the underclass won't betray the overclass because they won't dare, and besides, there's always the shadow of threat ensuring that assumption. What's more, the powerful can afford to project, to assume that the less powerful want whatever they do. In a patriarchy, then, it makes sense that men commit their secrets to women far more than the reverse. This is a complicated process, though, because most of the time a woman keeps a man's secrets safe. She might do so as an act of mercy or of fear, pity or ambition, loyalty, even love, but always as an act of survival. I often quote the lines by the late poet Muriel Rukeyser, "What would happen if one woman told the truth about her life? The world would split open." But now I'd add to that, what would happen if women told the truth about men's lives? The world would be transformed. No wonder society's reluctant, to say the least, to engage the complex challenge of that. Take, for example, the current trial of Noor Salman, the widow of Omar Mateen, who killed 49 people at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida in 2016, and who was killed in a shootout with the police. Salman is charged with aiding and abetting Mateen, and with obstruction of justice and providing material support to Daesh, or the Islamic State. The prosecution has pointed out that Salman was seen driving around with her husband, apparently scouting possible targets, and that she fabricated a cover story for him on the night of the shooting, but the defense has brought to light other facts and context. That Salman is apolitical, a woman of limited education who found herself in an arranged marriage, and she's the devoted mother of a toddler. Furthermore, she was the victim of continual severe domestic abuse by Mateen for years. He punched her, choked her, threatened her with death, repeatedly raped her, and this is hardly the first time we've seen this pattern. Mass shooters having a history of domestic violence is now commonplace, as is, for that matter, the frequency with which such shooters exercise coercive control over their partners, often forcing them to participate in various ways. Kevin Kelly, who murdered 26 congregants at First Baptist Church in Texas in November of 2017, had been court-martialed by the Air Force for domestic violence. Mohamed Bouhel, who mowed down 84 people with a truck in Nice, France in 2016, he was known to police for spousal assault, and on and on. Lee Harvey Oswald, Timothy McVeigh, David Koresh. Some of the killers claimed political motivation, some just went so-called postal, but the one consistent element is the pattern of domestic abuse. So why do we ever blame these women for forced cooperation, when and if they do? Is it related to attitudes of blame the victim, of she asked for it in rape cases, and no means yes in sexual harassment, and why didn't she just leave in battery? Why do we not apply a Stockholm Syndrome analysis to these women? Why, for that matter, do we not follow up more carefully on perpetrators of domestic violence who may well be en route to mass shootings? Can it be because we still fail to grasp the depth of terror that compels such women to keep their men's secrets, what it costs for them to speak? I do not mean to whitewash all such women from moral culpability or agency, nor do I perceive women solely or even primarily as victims, but even the law recognizes the relationship between coercion and legal guilt in the duress defense, which excuses a person from criminal responsibility if that person had a well-grounded fear of serious bodily injury for refusing to act and also had no plausible hope of escaping the threat. Yet, bizarrely, this defense is rarely employed for abused women. Still, sometimes a woman does keep a man's secret safe for less violent reasons. Sometimes she keeps silent for plain old monetary gain, although that, too, may be a form of survival, especially when the alternative is that ever-present shadow of threat. Then again, over the course of her life, sometimes she changes and breaks her silence. Take, for example, the Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, case. Pundits scratch their heads, wondering why has she come forward? She could lose money. Is she a publicity hound? Is she in search of more payoff? She herself cites Me Too as her inspiration, but whether we believe that or not, we're still left with interesting questions. Why Trump has never attacked only two people, Vladimir Putin and Stormy Daniels. What do those two people have on him? And why did his minions pay her so much cash originally? Maybe it's less of a mystery if you remember how men entrust or inflict the act of keeping their secrets onto women. We know that Trump's womanizing, his affairs, his appallingly misogynistic behavior, including flat-out sexual assault, does not diminish the support of his fanatic followers, including many hypocritical evangelicals who gave him a mulligan because he supports their anti-abortion agenda. We also know that the original agreement between Trump and Clifford specified a list of materials that she should not divulge, audio tapes, videos, etc., and it included the results of any paternity test. Clifford herself has said they had unprotected sex. What if, then, she had become pregnant, and Trump counseled her to get, or himself arranged for, an abortion? Clifford already has a 7-year-old daughter. Isn't abortion the one so-called sin that all but the hardest in the hardcore of Trump's base could never forgive him for? If women told the truth about men's lives, the world would be transformed. Those are my fighting words. Remember to add yours on Twitter and tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for us today. Remember that we'll be on spring break next week, but back on April 8th. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on our radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and also at iTunes, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, and you can check out my website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us on April 8th right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.